Good evening. My name is Belinda Racklin. I work for San Francisco Housing Development Corporation as a financial empowerment and housing counselor. I'd like to welcome you to the San Francisco Housing Expo of 2021 and the Affordable Housing Alternatives panel discussion presented by Homeownership SF. This evening's discussion will consist of presentations from 4 leaders in the affordable housing community, followed by a Q&A session. Please feel free to take notes during the session, but I do ask you to please hold all questions until the Q&A session. If you feel you may forget your question, please enter it into the chat box and we will answer it again during the Q&A. Homeownership SF is San Francisco's affordable housing resource and information hub, one-stop shop. It is a citywide collaboration comprised of 5 local experienced nonprofit housing organizations that serve as a centralized hub for local affordable housing. The 5 agencies that make up Homeownership SF are Asian Inc., Balance, Mission Economic Development Agency, also known as META, San Francisco Housing Development Corporation, also known as SFHDC, San Francisco Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Community Center, also known as the SFLGBT Center. The Homeownership SF collaboration or team provides programs and services tailored to fit your needs, whether you're a renter, a home.
Belinda, you're on mute.
Oops, sorry, I will start again. Sorry about that. Good evening. My name is Belinda Racklin. I work for the San Francisco Housing Development Corporation as a financial empowerment and housing counselor.
And hey, Belinda, I'm so sorry, just to jump in. We just missed that last little bit of what you said. I'm so sorry about that. That was my mistake.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, again, good evening. My name is Belinda Racklin. I work for San Francisco Housing Development Corporation as a financial empowerment counselor / coach. I'd like to welcome you to the San Francisco Housing Expo of 2021 and the Affordable Housing Alternatives panel discussion presented by Homeownership SF. This evening's discussion will consist of presentations from 4 leaders in the affordable housing community, followed by a Q&A session. Please feel free to take notes during the presentation, but I do ask that you leave your questions until the Q&A session. If you feel you're going to forget your question, then feel free to put your question in the chat box. And again, we will get to it during the Q&A. Homeownership SF is San Francisco's affordable housing resource and information hub, a one-stop shop, a citywide collaboration comprised of local experienced nonprofit housing agencies that serve as a centralized hub for local affordable housing. The 5 agencies that make up the homeownership collaboration are Asian Inc., Balance, Mission Economic Development Agency, also known as META, San Francisco Housing Development Corporation, also known as SFHDC, the San Francisco Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Community Center, also known as the SFLGBT Center. The Homeownership SF collaboration or team provides programs and services tailored to fit your needs, whether you're a renter, home buyer, homeowner, or entrepreneur. These services include information and referral services, education services, workshops, and housing and financial counseling services based on your needs. Tomorrow, each agency will have a virtual booth in the expo where you can obtain information on the workshops, programs, and services their agency provides. There are several challenges to finding affordable housing, which we will talk about some of those tonight. One of them being is finding affordable housing on a low income. Or maybe you've been applying for Dahlia over and over again and have not been selected for the lottery. Or you may be in an unstable living situation where you may need to consider other alternatives to find something safe and sustainable. Lately, we have found people that need to move out of their housing situation because they may live with um, senior parents or seniors, and are asked to leave due to COVID. Also, you just may have a credit score that is, that makes you uneligible. So again, those are all things that are challenging. So I encourage you to reach out to the housing organizations or counselors at the housing organizations and work with someone to help you through these challenges and maybe help you find some solutions. Our presenters today will talk about a range of housing and service options that may meet your needs, whether you are currently homeless or simply trying to find something on a very limited budget. Or maybe even you're trying to find something that, is market rate. Lack of inventory is also a challenge. So tonight's panelists are Itran Dome from Chinatown Community Development Center, Keith Cooley, San Francisco Community Land Trust, Karen Kopic, Home Match, Megan Gary, Compass Family Services. So the next voice you will hear is that of Itran from Chinatown Community Development Center. Welcome, Itran.
Yeah, thank you, Belinda. So good evening, everyone. I'm Itran. I work at Chinatown Community Development Center as a community organizer and a housing counselor. So today I want to maybe start to answer some questions that you may have, and really, if you have any more questions that I did not answer, we can take it to the Q&A, and then I'm sure there's a way to follow up after this workshop. So I'll do my best with the next 10 minutes, but bear with me if you feel that your questions weren't answered. So I was given some basic questions that I think the participants may want to know, and so I want to at least answer those in the next 10 minutes. I think a very basic question that people may ask is, okay, Chinatown Community Development Center, what are your properties? One of the best way to find out is if you go to our website. You can see here, ChinatownCDC.org, and then there's a tab. In housing, if you go down and you click on our portfolio, it'll tell you. And right now we currently have 35 properties. It's kind of centered around the Tenderloin, North Beach, and Chinatown. How do we get these 35 property? And I want to go a little bit into detail about that because it kind of informs the application process for them. So some of them that we acquired, we did it through like big tenant organizing cases, right? Where we took over maybe like a very badly maintained SRO hotel from a landlord who just didn't care. Or we're doing some acquisition through our small sites acquisition program where we're going in and it's smaller property, but we're trying to preserve the neighborhood because we feel that otherwise that property will probably be sold and contribute to gentrification. And then, in 2014, when San Francisco decided to work with Housing and Urban Development and take some of the RAD, we call it, program funding, the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program funding, what they did was the San Francisco Housing Authority kind of gave some of its property to developers who do pretty deep work in the community and asked them to rehabilitate these buildings and kind of take over the property management and residential services side. So that's how we came to have these 35 properties. Oh, and then of course we're a developer. So we are also developing a lot, hopefully, definitely not enough to meet the demand in this city. But I think sharing kind of what's in our portfolio and how it came to be there is really important, because it takes me to the next question is, how do you apply? And so if you go back to the website and you go in the same housing tab, go to the very end and you click on apply for housing. And everything I just mentioned, you can read in detail in these tabs too, but let's focus on applying for housing. So when you get here, it'll tell you, thank you so much for wanting to apply to the properties that CCDC has. And it'll tell you that each application process is different for each building. And that's because a lot of what I very briefly explained is some of it is through city funding, but then you can go through the mayor's office, go through Dahlia, right? Some of it is going to be through the San Francisco Housing Authority. So it's going to be a lot of different bureaucratic processes, but I guess what we can guarantee is for our property, you can kind of go down and we'll have an announcement board. So regardless of what the history it is of these buildings, you can see for each one that we have our own announcement board with the specific application process. And a lot of time pre-COVID, what you would do is then you would reach out to the phone number or to the email, or you can even go straight to the property that, and we'll have a property management team and a residential service team there as well, like, a whole leasing team. And you pick up a paper application, or you can be mailed one, and then you return it in person or you mail it back. Right now during the pandemic, a lot of it is going to be happening online. So this is an example of some of the properties where we are in the process with each of them, right? So for instance, this one is taking applications. This one is, there was a lottery event and now they're doing the follow-up. So each building in our portfolio will be in different processes, and we'll make the announcement here. And then we get to the wait list. So before I jump into all of that, I want to just quickly say that for the buildings that we do have city funding, of course, you go through Dahlia. And I just wanted to quickly note, because as a housing counselor who does this work and help tenants apply, what's important is that understanding how to read the lottery list, right? It gets really complicated. And I want to quickly show it because it's kind of, I have this like tips what to remember when actually applying. And so it's really hard if you apply through Dahlia in the general pool. So most people, we encourage them to at least aim for one of the preferences, which is the live or work in San Francisco preference. So really, really remember to tick that box off when you go through the application process, because it increases your chance. Basically, if you get to the general pool, your chances are pretty minimal. So that's really important to do, is remembering to check this off when you fill out your Dahlia application. And then something else is to make sure your contact information is up to date, because if you do get called, then it's a really bad reason to miss out on a very, very rare opportunity. But I think what I really just wanted to go over is understanding what your lottery number means. I think a lot of time people see, for example, like I'm number 500. So what does that mean? You kind of have to understand that for this property, right? I'm looking at, there's 113 available slots and 500 on the open, on the wait list. So it'll filter through everyone in the priority list first before it gets to you. So maybe even if your ranking like on the wait list was 800, you can kind of figure out that after you do the calculation, like, okay, 20 applicants are on this list, 41 are for the displacement preference, and then you get to the live or work in San Francisco. By the time it makes it to the general pool, your chances are pretty low. So understanding what your lottery number means is really important. And I think, I don't know if usually a lot of times when tenants go and we tell them the lottery number, they necessarily understand what we mean, but I think getting to understand that is really important. And understanding that might be helpful because if you get evicted, then you'll be very sure to get your DTHP voucher, right? So that's something I can go into more in the Q&A. And finally, I just wanted to talk about what happens if you do get on the wait list or if you do get selected. And so we have tenants who come in, they usually have a letter and it says, oh, in the next 2 to 3 business day, you need to submit everything for this step 1. And it can be really, really overwhelming. And it usually, as a counselor, we get these cases a lot where by the time the letter gets to the tenant, they only have maybe 1 day to get everything in and we have to email it. So I think step 1 is really long, but usually for every applicant in the household, you have to submit all of these paperwork. And it really takes a lot of time, and the deadline or the time that you are given to do it, 2 to 3 business days, is not enough. And a lot of time that's how people miss even like claiming their spot on the wait list or an open unit that they were selected for. So being very careful. Otherwise, I would say that every year, if you're on the wait list, they'll send you a form to fill out and you fill it out and you mail it back to confirm your spot on the wait list. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about what other services we provide as an organization, but this organization is huge. I work in community organizing and in the housing counseling. So I just wanted to talk about that, which is we do have a housing clinic, and that's in person, Monday from 2 to 4. And then on Thursdays from 10:30 to 12:30. It's located at 663 Clay Street, but there is a hotline and you can call at any time and you leave your name and a message and we respond within 2 business days. So what kind of services do we provide through the housing clinic and hotline, right? We don't do legal aid, but basically if you get evicted or we know you have an eviction, we do service referral, and we do have a handful of organizations that we work with and are familiar with. Otherwise, evictions, not just evictions, we do rent increases, we do harassment, we do all different types of pass-through, privacy, and especially housing code and repair issues. So we will definitely try to address your needs. And if we can't do that, we will do referrals to other organizations. And yeah, I would love to talk more about this at the Q&A because I think my time is up. All right. I think Keith from the San Francisco Community Land Trust is going next. So passing it on to Keith.
Thanks, Saitran. Good to be here this evening, and thank you, Homeownership SF, for putting on this event. My name is Keith Cooley. I'm with the San Francisco Community Land Trust. You may or may not have heard of us. We're one of the secrets of affordable housing in the city. The Land Trust was founded in 2004 by housing activists. We have 13 buildings in the city, and we're the only community land trust in San Francisco. Basically, what we do is take residential buildings off of the speculative market into community ownership. Our mission is to provide affordable housing for low and moderate income households in San Francisco. And we do this through an anti-displacement strategy where we purchase buildings where tenants are vulnerable to eviction or displacement. And we preserve the affordable units in the building. The Land Trust uses money from the Small Sites program of the Mayor's Office of Housing to purchase the buildings and renovate them. Another part of our mission at the San Francisco Community Land Trust is to provide residents more control and a degree of ownership in their housing. And we do that through housing cooperatives. So the Land Trust portfolio has rentals, and then we have housing cooperatives. And we operate two types of housing cooperatives. Firstly, there's what's called limited equity housing cooperatives. Each household will have their own self-contained apartment in a building. And each household buys a share in the corporation that owns the building. The cost of the share can be anywhere between 10 to 25,000. And I realize, you know, for a low income person, that's quite a lot of money. Some of the credit unions, such as Self-Help Credit Union, provide loans to help households buy one of those shares. And that share gives you, the household, a right to occupy a unit in the building. Then every month, the household pays a carrying charge, which is equivalent to rent, which covers the operating cost of the building. So that carrying charge is very similar to Homeownership Association dues that a condo owner pays. And when the household vacates, they sell the share back to the co-op and receive the initial amount that they paid for it, plus some appreciation in the value of the share. And that usually goes up around 5% a year. So that gives you some share of the ownership of the building. The other type of housing cooperative that we operate is self-managed group house cooperatives. And in those buildings, each resident has their own bedroom, and then they share a bathroom and kitchen. The resident is part of the cooperative that manages the building. So each resident takes on some of the responsibilities of running the building. In return, they get a credit on their rent, which we call a self-managed credit. And so in these type of housing cooperatives, the rents are very affordable. They're usually less than $1,000 a month. And that rent is paid to the land trust, and the land trust pays all the bills and utilities, property tax, and things like that. So this type of group housing is really good for people such as artists, performers, people have just moved to the city. We call it self-managed group housing, but some people call it co-living or something like that. So we have a building in the Mission called Merry-Go-Round House, which is 2 Victorian buildings joined together, which has 14 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and 2 kitchens. And then we also have Purple House, which is a 10-bedroom building on Oak Street in around the Nopa district. So for those two buildings to apply, you would go to Dahlia, the Mayor's Office of Housing lease up program. When those vacancies come available. For the limited equity housing cooperative, we have our first building, which is 53 Columbus in Chinatown. And I'm gonna put a flyer up for that, that building because we have a vacancy there. It's a 1-bedroom, and it is aimed for people who have 40% adjusted median income. So if you're a household of one, then that's below 35,850. And if there's 2 people in your household, then it's up to 41,000. And it's also an opportunity to join the wait list for this building. And we're going to be getting applications at the end, about the last week in March. And I provide here on the flyer our website and an email address. So you should check the website for that possibility. So the Land Trust is the main affordable housing provider that's creating new co-ops in the city. There are some other large co-ops. They're called HUD co-ops because HUD formed them. And one of them, Freedom West, is the largest housing co-op west of the Mississippi. And you can apply directly to them for vacancies. And I believe they take Section 8. And I know that many of those HUD co-ops currently have vacancies. So this is just an example of these alternative housing that the Land Trust has. And I'm happy to answer any questions right at the end of the session. And now I'd like to pass on the baton to Karen at Home Match. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for sharing your Friday night with us. Super exciting to be here and see so many people looking at affordable housing on a Friday. So it just shows how important housing is in San Francisco and the Bay Area. My name is Karen Kopic, and I'm with Covia's Home Match program. We're a home sharing program here in San Francisco. It's kind of a different way of thinking about housing, where people open up their homes or apartments to people that are looking for affordable housing, and both sides end up benefiting from more stability. So when you think about your housing solution and what you're going to do, I want you to think about shared housing and add that to the list. James did. So James is the gentleman, it's the only gentleman actually on my slide. So James is the top left there. James worked as a security guard at an affordable housing complex for older adults. At the time when he was working there, he used to have to commute about an hour, hour and a half from the East Bay, where he lived in an Airbnb, and he shared a room with 3 other men. So they had 4 people in a room during COVID times, and he had a long commute. So he was looking for something more affordable and something closer to work. Well, luckily, Gladys lived a block from his office. Gladys actually was looking for a little extra income to help with her mortgage, because money gets tight as Social Security doesn't increase quite as fast as the cost of living. So we were able to connect the 2 of them. The first night together, they had red beans and rice, and then James taught her how to cook some. He loves Mexican food and Asian fusion. So they really experimented with meals together and had a really good time. To the right of them are Helena and Jennifer. Jennifer works at Trader Joe's. She was sharing a 1-bedroom apartment with 4 people and was looking for a space to call her own. Helena has been 40 years in her rent-controlled apartment, and just the little 1 to 3% increase every year was enough to make her housing insecure. She was worried she was going to lose her place, and so she needed someone to come in to actually help share the costs. It was Helena's birthday last weekend. Jennifer made her a cake, and they all enjoyed it, including Delilah, the lovely little black cat hanging out there on the futon. And then lastly, Nora and Perla. Perla is from Peru, has been in the States a very long time as a caretaker, but was living in a very unsafe environment. So she found us and said she was really looking for safety. Well, she found safety and more with Nora. Nora is a single mom. She raised her son in her apartment for about 10 or 15 years. But when he went off to school, she was super proud, but then all of a sudden she lost her child support payments and didn't think she'd be able to afford to stay in her apartment. And frankly, with very little savings, she wasn't sure if she would have a house at all. So we connected them right in the nick of time. And now they enjoy Perla's awesome cooking. And Nora is teaching her how to improve her English and English slang. So these are just 3 examples of people in our program. What's common across all 3 is that people have more stable housing, more financial stability, but maybe more importantly, they found community and they enjoy living together, even in these crazy times, or maybe even mostly in these crazy times of COVID. So how about you? Maybe you'll be the next picture up on our block. So how do we work? We are a personalized matchmaking service. So you can almost think of us like a dating service, but for housing, not for romance. So we connect people, we do comprehensive screenings. So we do background check, we verify people's income, your identity, make sure you are who you are. But more importantly, what we're really looking for is who are you, what's the essence of you, and what are you looking for in someone that you want to live with? So we have extensive application that it's not so extensive, but we have a long application that really gets into your lifestyle. Do you smoke? Do you have pets? Are you somebody that likes to clean the dishes immediately in the sink, or can they hang out a week or so? So we really try to get to understand who you are, how you engage in a home, and who may be a good match for you. When we find someone who we think is a good match, or when we connect the 2 of you together, then if it's a match and you want to move in, then we help you with what we call a living together agreement. This has all the legal terms and conditions you need for home sharing, but more importantly, it's really an opportunity to sit down and set expectations about how you're going to coexist in the home and anticipate issues before they become issues. So here we talk about is, who's going to clean the bathroom? How often? Are overnight guests okay? Is there a gender preference? Is it okay if they're romantic partners or if it's your sister visiting? We go into the nitty gritty of how you're going to live together, because before you move in is the best time to figure out if you're not going to be compatible, if there's kind of a deal breaker. But more importantly, it's just an opportunity to start that honest, open conversation about how you're going to engage together, communicate, and enjoy living together in the same home. We provide ongoing support. So Jackie and Jonathan here, they're adorable. About a month or so after they moved in, I came by to check out, well, this is pre-COVID, right? They don't have masks, so it's when we could actually see people. So I went over to their house to see how they were doing. We hung out, they told me what was going on. We're available if things aren't going well. If there's any issues, you can always call us. We have a great partnership with the Bar Association of San Francisco, their conflict intervention service. So they really can help people. If you get stuck, they can help you get unstuck. So they're just a really great resource that we have that we can take advantage of. We operate in English, Spanish, and Chinese, and we're free. So kind of, what's not to love about that? So we are full-scale service. When you call, we answer the phone, you talk to a real person. We are, with COVID, trying to do less in person, but if that's what we need to, we meet you where you are. So if technology isn't your best friend, we find ways of getting around that. So eligibility for a program, if you have a home, so we work with people that both own homes as well as renters. So either one that has an extra room will help you out. You just have to have photo ID. We just have to make sure you are who you say you are. 3 references, pass a background check. So the way that we've kind of drawn the line is if you have a felony, unfortunately, you would not be qualified. but any other criminal history, it's about disclosing and having a conversation with the person you move in with to make sure everybody feels comfortable. Same thing for bankruptcies, evictions, and liens. It's about conversation. And then you have to have, if you own the home or if you're a renter, you have to have the ability to rent out the room and share your home, because we don't want someone to move in and then have to leave immediately, or both jeopardize their housing because it's not a legal situation. If you're seeking housing, it's the same three things, the photo ID, references, background check. But here we do have two additional requirements. You must live, work, or study in San Francisco. And this is because we receive city and county funding. So they want to make sure that it's going for people that are engaged in the city. And then secondly, there's an income ceiling. So you can't earn more than 120% of the area median income. So if you took all salaries in San Francisco, you put a line right in the middle, that's the median income, and we work a little higher. I'll be honest with you, I don't think anyone's walked through my door that earns $107,000. Most people we serve earn 20, 30, 35,000. So really we're geared up for all income levels, but that's the highest that you can be. Our rooms range from 800 to 1,300, more or less. They've been lower now with COVID and with more availability of rooms. I do have 2 rooms right now for $500 in an affordable housing complex for older adults, so people over 62. So if you're female over 62 and can afford $500, let us know, because we're looking for someone to be a roommate for somebody there. So let's get started. It's Friday night. We're all excited. It's time to move. So you can check out our available rooms. We have a flyer here that just talks about the rooms we have, what people are looking for, a little bit about who they are. We have an inquiry form on our website, so you can go check that out. I'll put these links in the chat later. You could call us, heaven forbid, use the plain old telephone. Like I said, we're real people. We answer the phone, or email us. So whatever your communication style is, we'd love to be able to help you out. And then lastly is, we don't just operate in San Francisco. So say you're calling in, you're over in Alameda or Contra Costa. We operate the exact same program in Contra Costa, Alameda, Marin, and mostly recently we launched in Monterey County. So, and we have partners that do very similar stuff in San Mateo and Santa Clara. So thank you all again for being here on a Friday night. We super appreciate it. Look forward to seeing if we can't work together to, find more people stable homes and community. So I'm going to pass it over to Megan Geary from Compass Family Services.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. I hope that folks are doing okay and staying safe during this very challenging time in a lot of our lives. My name is Megan Geary. I am the program director for Compass Central City Access Point, which is through Compass Family Services. So I am going to talk a little bit about what to do if you are experiencing homelessness or a housing crisis in San Francisco, how you can get connected to resources that might be able to help your situation. So San Francisco operates under a general kind of homeless response system, which is funded by the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing through the city. Within the homeless response system, there are multiple different coordinated entry systems, and each system is kind of different, and they're targeted by population. So there is a coordinated entry system for adults. There is a system for families. There is a system for transitional aged youth. And there's also a system for veterans. So you can get matched with the system that's most appropriate for your situation. Transitional aged youth is for folks who are ages 18 to 24. The family system is for folks that have minor children in their care. The adult system is just anyone who doesn't meet the transitional aged youth definition. And then the veterans, of course, is for folks that have served in the military or any kind of military service. So each coordinated entry system kind of operates differently, but each of the coordinated entry systems have access points, which are kind of localized hubs for participants to go to get connected to any shelter or housing resources within the homeless response system. I am going to focus a little bit more on talking about resources for homeless families because that is my area of expertise. but I'll kind of go over the general definition of homelessness for San Francisco. So in order to engage in any of the coordinated entry systems, you have to be defined homeless according to your living situation. So the living situations that are accessible for coordinated entry are folks who are sleeping in their car, folks who are sleeping in a tent, or any other place kind of not meant for human habitation. Folks that are couch surfing, so if you're staying with friends and family, kind of bouncing around night to night. If you're living in a single room occupancy setting, if you are in an emergency shelter setting or private room shelter setting or a transitional housing facility, you would be eligible. Basically, if you kind of lack a consistent nighttime residence, you might be eligible for coordinated entry. For the family system, we do work with people that have physical custody of minor children, so folks that are under the age of 18. And for the other systems, you know, they work with either adults or folks that are that transitional age youth or veterans. So the access points are kind of the front door to have access to the coordinated entry systems. What we do is we have an intake screening process. So we would ask you questions around how long you've been experiencing homelessness, what is your income, does anyone in the family have any disabling conditions, and just kind of gather a snapshot of what's going on for you in your housing situation. And we would enter that into our database system. And from there determine, you know, kind of what shelter or housing opportunity we could potentially match you with. There are different shelter opportunities within the city, primarily for those that are kind of outside or, you know, lack a kind of permanent nighttime residence. There are what we call emergency shelters, and then there are also private room shelters. So depending on the system that you engage with, you could potentially be matched to, you know, a nighttime shelter or a more long-term option. So once we go through kind of the intake and assessment process, you could potentially be matched to a housing opportunity depending on your situation. Those housing opportunities might include rental subsidies. We might refer you to a transitional housing facility where you could potentially stay for, you know, up to a couple of years. We would also refer you to any emergency shelter needs that you have. And then we would refer to some really kind of rare permanent supportive housing options. And each system is different. But basically, we are designed to kind of do an intake and assessment, get you matched to any resources that would be, you know, applicable to you. And then a big part of what we do is called problem solving. So we kind of ask you questions around your homeless situation and try to help you identify if there's anyone within your existing community that you could maybe shelter up with. You know, if you have a friend or family member that would allow you to stay with them, but they just need help with the groceries, you know, for a couple of months, or they need help paying their PG&E bill, we can kind of step in to help provide that financial assistance so that you could stay with that person and get off the streets or get out of whatever living situation that you're in. So I'm going to pull up the Department of Homelessness website, which will give you information as to which coordinated entry system you can contact depending on your specific population. So I will put this website in the chat, but there, if you click on, you know, each kind of population, let me share my screen. Give me 1 second. So if you go to the hsh.sfgov.org website, there is a plethora of information about coordinated entry, and then you can click below on which system you are applicable for. So if you would, if you have minor children in your care and you're experiencing a housing crisis, you would click on the family system, which would take you to a page with all of the contact information for the different access points within the family coordinated entry system. So that information is there, including phone numbers, websites for the different access points, and that's applicable for any population that you, you know, that you are eligible for. So if you're an adult, you can click on adult coordinated entry, and it'll have the information for the different access points that you can seek services at. This, of course, has been impacted by COVID, so I would recommend calling ahead of time. I'm not sure for all the access points kind of what their hours are. For Compass, we have resumed services back on site. So if you do have minor children in your care, you can come to our office at 37 Grove Street. But I would highly recommend calling ahead of time just to make sure that there's staff there that can help you. And then all of these access points also provide kind of general resources and referrals to other, housing opportunities, low income opportunities. Some of them do provide sort of case management services. So you would have somebody that could help you kind of navigate the system. And then another thing that I would kind of recommend if you are experiencing homelessness is to, try to tap into any existing resources that you have that you may, kind of not have thought about in a while. So I think, Karen mentioned Home Match, which is a great shared housing opportunity. We also work with the Homeward Bound program, which is a program that can help you to potentially obtain a bus ticket if there's another city or location where you have someone that you can stably stay with. We can help you get connected to that. But because, the city does have pretty limited resources when it comes to homelessness, we really encourage people to try to tap into any existing resources that may be useful to them and try to help them, financially or resource-wise to get connected to those resources. If you do experience a homeless crisis, please call, one of these access points or stop by to visit to get connected to shelter and housing resources. And I will share this link in the chat so that you all have access to that. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to our facilitator for today.
Thank you, each and every one of our panelists. Great information. I would like to urge everyone to reach out to a housing counseling agency. I work for San Francisco Housing Development Corporation, where we have financial empowerment and housing counselors that can help you connect with each and every one of these organizations. And then also iTran is a counselor for Chinatown Community Development Center. We welcome, and I'm going to speak for iTran with this, we welcome everyone to come in and get services from our agencies. Some additional assistance if you can't, navigate or you're not finding luck on Dahlia, not receiving, a lottery number and getting frustrated with that. I also encourage you to go to a housing counselor, and then we can help you connect with the housing developers themselves. So for example, Related, which is a housing developer, or McCormick Barron, or Tenderloin Neighborhood Housing Development Corporation. So you can go directly to these agencies or to these organizations also, like iTran was saying, and apply for housing. Also, there is Open House, and that is a website, and I'm going to ask our tech person to put their website or their link, the link to Open House in the chat box. And they're a list of available affordable housing for seniors and people with disabilities and families. And they're in the San Francisco and Greater Bay Area. Greater Bay Area. Also, there is Affordable Housing Online, which will give you a list of Section 8 wait lists that are open. Currently, San Francisco wait list is not open, but there are wait lists, in California that are open. Sometimes when you are in a situation where you're looking for affordable housing and may not be able to find it immediately in San Francisco. You may have to go outside of San Francisco, maybe one of the neighboring cities, but that doesn't mean that you can't eventually move back to San Francisco. That will just, you obtain housing outside until you can, and keep applying, keep connecting with housing counselors and keep applying. You got to get in it to win it, right? Keep applying, and eventually your lottery number is going to come up. So Affordable Housing Online has a list of Section 8 wait lists, and let's see, there are 17 Section 8 housing choice voucher wait lists in California that are all either always open or that have not announced a closing date. And the one closest to us is San Mateo County, California. Moving to Work is the name of the program. And it was last updated January 28th, 2021. So that was recently. So again, take a look at affordablehousingonline.com and maybe check out that resource. Another one is MPH, and that is MPH of Northern California, nonprofithousing.org. And on that website, you can get a list of available Section 8 rental housing, so houses that are available in San Francisco right now, currently for rent. And last, as a resource, I'm going to say, please reach out to housing counselors for application assistance. It's much easier to apply when you have some assistance. So we will assist you in completing the application. If you do submit an application and you are denied, then please reach out to a housing counselor so we can take a look at it, because it may be just something as simple as a mistake in you calculating your income, or there are mitigating circumstances to your credit score. So we're trained to recognize all of this and, you know, resubmit your application, review and resubmit your application, or work with whatever developer is leasing up the property. Okay, well, I guess at this time we'll take questions and answers.
So Belinda, this is Kristen. I have a couple of questions that I just took down during the course of the presentation, and some of them were answered on the chat. But I just want to address some of the common ones that come up. So a couple of questions arose regarding how to find housing if you have a disability.
Maybe I can go. I would say that basically for our properties, when you apply, it would just ask what kind of needs you need, right? I think a lot of time disability are kind of framed in a very physical sense. So it would ask, do you need like accommodations related to mobility or hearing or vision? And I would say that in a lot of our property, we do have residential services, because we do understand that we are taking in folks from different backgrounds. And so I would say then that our residential services do the more non-physical service providing, and we kind of refer our clients. And we also have an intensive care services team that do work with tenants who want support in specific ways.
I think for home sharing as well, we don't, basically is what, if you do an application and we get to know you, we tell you what homes we have available and what they're like. And then it's up to you to decide if that would be, you know, a fit. Say if stairs aren't your friend, you know, we'll mention it has 42 stairs or whatnot, but we kind of let you know the information and then decide what may be a fit rather than vice versa.
Okay, also when you apply on Dahlia, there most of the properties, they will allow you to check the box that you do have you do have a disability. And also you can reach out to organizations such as Catholic Charities, Hamilton Families, and then again, a housing counselor. Homeownership SF has a list of the housing counseling agencies. Remember, I said the 5 local agencies, and connect with the housing counselor, and they can help you research to find your housing needs, whatever they may be.
Okay, there was one other question that came up, and I'm guessing that someone on this panel can answer this. And this was, are birth certificates required for Section 8 eligibility?
Yeah, this is Megan from Compass. Birth certificates are required for the lease up and housing process for Section 8. That is one of the things that they do require if you have children. I don't believe that birth certificates are required if you are an adult without minor children. They do need an ID as well as a social security card if that's applicable, or an ITIN. And each housing authority or Section 8 system is different. So it does kind of vary county by county. But I don't believe that a birth certificate, at least it's not required to apply. You might need it as you go through the application process, but it definitely is not required, upon application.
Thank you, Megan. Looking back, a couple other, let's see. I think that actually covers a lot of the main questions that were addressed. Karen or Keith, I know there are a couple of questions that you were answering throughout. Do you want to address any of those questions for the general attendees here?
Sure. I think people had asked how to contact us. I think like Belinda made a great comment is, and Itron is, they're the central agencies. They can also refer you. So you can always call them. You can call us directly. We have our contact info. I think our information's on the website. I put it in the chat. But you can also call Belinda, Itron. They're the gateway to all these services as well. And they can really help you. They kind of be the traffic controllers and tell you which direction to go. So they can be very helpful as well.
Thank you. And just everyone, I see some of our presenters are posting information into the chat. Please feel free to share whatever information links you would like to share. I've also posted the link to the Housing Expo page for this website. And that's where you can go and find links to all of the presenters who are here today and their specific organizations.
And remember the exhibit hall tomorrow, where a lot of the housing agencies and presenters that are presenting this evening will be, and you can go into the virtual booths and ask some questions and find out about the programs and services.
Yeah, and I know this is about housing alternative, but definitely keep a lookout for the state and city program that is rolling out soon for rental assistance if you do need help paying rent. The details are not clear, but just call us. That's our job.
Right,
is to
right.
figure out the details.
That's right. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you all so much. Belinda, I think that covers the questions from the chat.
Okay.
So,
Well, again, thank you everyone for your attendance, and thank the panelists. Wonderful, great information. Attendees, I, again, cannot urge you enough to reach out to the agencies or the housing counselors and get some assistance with your home search, right? It's even difficult for market rate, people that are searching for market rate housing. So don't get discouraged. There's help out there, and just let us help you on your road to housing. Have a good evening.